Welcome to Bassmaster Radio, presented by Phoenix Boats, the show for fishermen by fishermen. Today's show is brought to you by Enigma Fishing. Cast, catch, repeat. Visit Anderson, South Carolina, home of beautiful Lake Hartwell. Phoenix Boats, experience the difference. And by the Bass Anglers Sportsman Society. Now, here's lifetime BASS member Thom Abraham.
Hey, welcome back. Phoenix Boats Bassmaster Radio, and let's get things started looking forward. We'll look back with Brian New coming up in the next segment off of his win at the St. Johns River, but let's look ahead as the pros are heading for Knoxville, the same place that the Bassmaster Classic was a couple of years ago with those great crowds, and they will fish the Tennessee River at the head end there. A lot of guys will be running to Loudon. Maybe some will go to Tellico. We'll see, but if you're going to talk about that part of the country, you really want to talk to Brandon Card. He's one of the guys. He's from the Lake Norris area, which is just a little bit north of there, but he has some good experience in that region, and he joins us now. Brandon, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Tom.
I suspect that you're really looking forward to this. Did not go the way you wanted it to go at the St. Johns River, and you probably couldn't get everybody's complaining about how cold it's going to be in Tennessee this upcoming week, but probably something that you're looking forward to and get wash away that bad tournament as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Man, that St. Johns River, that was a tough pill to swallow because you could be doing the right thing, but just in the wrong section of river and just totally miss them. You know, they were only pulled up in just certain specific areas, and I guess I just happened to fish in a part of the river where they just hadn't pulled up yet. So just time to just forget about that one, and definitely I'm getting pretty amped up about this Knoxville event for sure.
Yeah, you know that someday we'll be going back there for a Bassmaster Classic, I'm sure. But your thoughts about the last Classic that was there, the tremendous crowds at takeoff, 5,000-6,000 people, at the landing there, at the volunteer landing. It won't necessarily be like that this time, but what a cool venue, and it's just such a great spot to hold a Bassmaster Elite Series event.
Yeah, I mean, Knoxville is definitely a fishing town for sure, fishing city, if you will. Growing up in that area, I grew up about 45 minutes north of Knoxville in Caryville, Tennessee, but spent a lot of time in Knoxville, and I didn't realize that, that it was not normal to be like a fishing town. Like after traveling around all over the place, I'm like, oh, man, East Tennessee is crazy about bass fishing. In other parts of the country, maybe not so much. So, obviously down in Texas and stuff, people are in Alabama are definitely fishing crazy. But East Tennessee is for sure. And just growing up in that area, everybody fishes. And we have so many lakes within, I think, an hour's drive of Knoxville. I think there's like 7 or 8 reservoirs to fish, and that's not even mentioning all the rivers and stuff that you can catch bass out of too. So it's just kind of in our blood in East Tennessee. Just, that's just what you do. You just go fishing.
It's really the state of Tennessee. I don't want to say I've lived in Tennessee now for 14 years, and I live down by Tim's Ford Lake, and we have Chickamauga in one direction, and then Gunnersville in the next, and of course Normandy and these lakes around here. And it's funny because people think that everybody in Tennessee must, if you're from Tennessee, you must know that particular body of water. And I always joke with Brandon Lester. They talk about him like he's one of the locals when it comes to fishing out of Knoxville and Loudon and Tellico, and he's like, I'd never hardly even been up there, because in Tennessee you can drive, you drive an hour and you drive by 6 lakes. I mean, it's just nuts. It's a lot. You don't have to really roam that far.
No, I mean, that's so true. Like Tim's Ford, I've never fished Tim's Ford. Like I would be driving by, 10 lakes getting there. So yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, and other places, people, they don't think anything of driving 3 hours to get to the lake, and here you drive 3 hours and you're probably going to drive by 15 lakes. That's just the way it is.
Exactly.
Talk about the way it will be because of the fact that we've had a brutally cold week throughout the Mid-South. It's been cold. It's been icy. Water temps have got to be dropping. It's not going to be a heck of a lot warmer for you guys when you actually get going. It's going to start out real cold with the practice days. It may warm up a little bit. But what kind of a lake will this be in February? even as opposed to the way it was a couple of years ago at the Classic. But what do you anticipate it being like?
Well, as far as weights go, I think it's going to be very similar to what we had at the Classic. Obviously, I wasn't able to fish in that Classic, but just looking at the weights and everything, I think it's going to be very similar. I think the difference that we'll see is that the fish probably won't be as far back into places as they were, when they fished the Bassmaster Classic. So, I don't think that the back ends of the creeks and, some of those places you saw some of the high finishers, cranking up fish in super shallow water. I don't know if that's going to play quite as much. But I do think that the main lake bite that a few of the finishers were on, I think Jacob Wheeler and Mark Daniels and a few other guys, I think that's going to be very similar. So, definitely it's going to be a cranking and a, jerkbait bite. And then, I think that you may see a little bit more of Teleco this go around. Teleco didn't really play at all in the Classic, and I think it'll play more in this one, especially with the colder temperatures and, with the smallmouth being more of a factor. Somebody's going to crack the code on Teleco.
Take a minute to get there, though, won't it? I mean, especially if it's like 23 degrees, and you might want to have that motorcycle helmet ready to go. And it just talk about in the best conditions how long it would take to get to Teleco. Because we saw guys at the St. Johns River running 2 hours. Gary Klaus running all the way, a couple of hours south of the takeoff there. But there were a lot of long runs. But that's different when you're in Florida than it would be in February in Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is I've driven up through there so many times, but never in a tournament. Like my wife and I, we go boating a lot in downtown Knoxville, just looking at all the houses and everything. And we've driven that section so many times, but I've never done it wide open all the way to the dam, where Teleco is. So I would say it's somewhere in maybe 50 minutes to an hour to get to, the canal that basically connects Fort Loudon and Tellico. Now, depending where you want to fish on Tellico, that's a different story. I mean, if you want to, fish halfway up into Tellico, well, then there's another, 25 minutes or so. But if you want to stay down there by the dam, I would say getting back to the launch ramp, it'd probably be a good hour. So
I fished an event there about 8 years ago, and I just was stunned at the difference between Fort Loudon and Tellico. I mean, just talk about that a little bit, because one is much more stained. Tellico, very much a clear water type, deeper water type lake.
Yeah, so the best way I can describe the water clarity on Tellico is just that it's just the Tennessee River water clarity. So what you come to expect on, Gunnersville, Kentucky Lake, that's typically the water clarity on Loudon. However, in the spring of the year, there's all kinds of, heavy rains that come through that area, and, it's usually a little bit dingier in the spring. But Tellico, a lot of the runoff from, heavy rains comes from the mountains. So, all the creeks and everything that feed Tellico, are pretty much clear creeks. So it takes a whole lot of torrential rains to even, make Tellico muddy. So that's the big difference, is that Fort Loudon, gets dingy a lot quicker, because it's obviously all that rain and stuff is kind of coming through the city and, stuff like that. So, but yeah, Tellico is definitely a lot cleaner. That's more of what I call like a conditional lake. Right. So when the conditions line up and you have, high winds, got some, some fronts coming through, those fish are going to feed. But when it's a high pressure day, it's calm out, that's when it's tough to get bit over there on Tellico. So Loudon's a little bit more of a safer bet, because you have that more of a stained water that's just going to, day in and day out, it's going to be easier to get bit. But Tellico, if the conditions are right, you can catch a really big bag over there.
Brandon Card has been our guest. Brandon, we appreciate you. You're a guy that we're looking at on our fantasy teams certainly this week. We're looking forward to big things for you. I know you're looking for a good bounce-back tournament there out of Knoxville, and we thank you for doing this.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. There you go, Brandon Card.